Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're bringing you a really premium, in-depth analysis of modern public affairs. We've designed this specifically for you, the professionals, executives, and leaders who are out there navigating today's incredibly complex communication ecosystems. We're going to deconstruct the exact mechanics of how modern digital advocacy truly works, and more importantly, how organizations actually build enduring trust and real policy influence. Okay, let's dive right into this.
So, I want to start with a question. Did you know that the most successful advocacy campaigns don't actually rely on just public support or just influential leaders? It's a super common assumption that simply generating the absolute most noise, or conversely, quietly cornering a few top executives in a room is how you win policy battles. But honestly, that is fundamentally flawed. True influence in today's digital ecosystem requires a dual approach.
Here is our game plan for today. We'll start with the advocacy misconception, move into our two core engines, Grassroots and Grasstops, then look at their combined synergy, explore digital search visibility, and wrap up with the Linkonize solution. Kicking things off with Section 1, the advocacy misconception, moving beyond public volume. Look, relying on just a single method, whether it's pure sheer public volume or just isolated elite influence, it inevitably leads to failure in modern advocacy. The core truth here is that visibility without credibility is weak, and credibility without visibility, well, it's basically invisible. The absolutely crucial point to remember is that public attention alone does not automatically generate institutional credibility within a complex governance ecosystem. Sure, sky-high levels of engagement definitely prove that a topic is relevant, but institutional stakeholders, they evaluate expertise and trustworthiness long before they assign any true legitimacy to a narrative. You simply cannot have one without the other.
Moving right along to Section 2. Engine 1, Grassroots, the engine of volume and participation.
And that brings us to our first core mechanism. Grassroots advocacy is collective action and public participation-driven influence. It's initiated and frankly amplified by members of the public, community groups, employees, or any affected stakeholders. Its primary objective is to mobilize broad participation to create volume, attention, and public legitimacy around a really specific issue or policy position. Think of it as the raw, unfiltered momentum of the public square.
But how does all that momentum actually translate into hard data? Well, within digital ecosystems, grassroots activity generates a highly measurable digital footprint. We are talking about public participation, community mobilization, social sharing, petitions, the whole 9 yards. And these aren't just standalone feel-good actions. They are highly measurable engagement indicators. These exact signals demonstrate to search algorithms, to journalists, and to policymakers that an issue genuinely occupies stakeholder attention and maintains deep relevance within public discourse.
All right, flipping the script to Section 3. Engine 2, Grasstops, the engine of authority and trust.
Because as we've established, volume isn't everything. Let's look at the other side of the equation. If Grassroots is about collective action, Grasstops advocacy is influence-driven by recognized authorities, institutional experts, and high-trust stakeholders. This approach connects your narrative directly to recognized sources of institutional authority, rather than just relying on mass participation. It's about engaging the exact specific individuals whose professional credibility and established stakeholder trust inherently shape decision-making environments.
So, where do these authority signals come up? They come from very specific participants: policy experts, industry leaders, academics, and government stakeholders. Their involvement is absolutely critical because it creates vital credibility. When recognized experts participate in advocacy efforts, audiences and institutions interpret that information through established trust frameworks. In short, the credibility of the source literally dictates the credibility of the message. This doesn't just generate noise, it completely reinforces your entire trust architecture.
Let's put it all together in Section 4, Combined Synergy, why both engines matter. Okay, so we have the engine of volume on one hand and the engine of trust on the other. Every successful campaign demands a balanced perception architecture that actively incorporates both. Grassroots builds attention and public legitimacy, blasting messages across digital channels to prove, hey, the public actually cares about this. Meanwhile, Grasstops builds the credibility and institutional trust that decision-makers require before acting, essentially proving that the experts agree. They function as perfectly complementary perception-building systems. And when you sync these two engines up seamlessly, they produce a completely comprehensive reputation framework. The outcomes of this synergy are a real game changer. You get stronger authority, way better stakeholder engagement, improved public trust, and ultimately, much greater policy influence and higher digital visibility. Institutional authority alone doesn't create widespread visibility.
and public noise alone absolutely doesn't create trust. But together, they heavily influence how narratives are evaluated across both policy circles and public perception.
Which brings us to Section 5, Digital Search Visibility, the ecosystem battlefield. Let's take a look at how this builds into the modern digital ecosystem, and how search engines, specifically Google, actually reward this exact advocacy synergy. Look, search visibility isn't magic. It's a structural mathematical evaluation. Search engines evaluate informational quality through very specific factors associated with expertise, authority, relevance, engagement, and entity relationships. Algorithms assess these entities collectively rather than just relying on a single metric. Content linked to trusted individuals benefits from much stronger valuation, while content with substantial audience interaction benefits from way stronger visibility indicators.
There is a direct one-to-one mapping of our two advocacy engines to search visibility. Grassroots activity provides the vital ecosystem signals of engagement and relevance, which directly increases broad narrative visibility. Conversely, Grasstops activity provides expertise and authority, which strengthens institutional credibility. This proves that digital authority in modern public affairs is established through a deliberate combination of audience interaction and trusted stakeholder references. You literally need both to win the search ecosystem.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 6, the Linkonize solution, building trust architecture.
So how do you actually build this trust architecture in practice? Well, Linkonize acts as the master architect of this dual-engine approach. Their framework seamlessly integrates public affairs, government relations, digital advocacy, stakeholder engagement, strategic communications, and reputation management. By synthesizing everything we've talked about today, Linkonize expertly navigates the digital advocacy flow. They don't just generate noise, and they don't just rely on isolated experts. They combine all these critical elements to build a highly resilient, long-term entity reputation that can genuinely shape policy and public perception.
I want to leave you with this really powerful thought from the source material. Successful advocacy is never built on visibility alone. It combines public participation with institutional credibility. That is how organizations build trust. So ask yourself right now, is your organization relying on just one engine, or are you actually architecting a comprehensive strategy for long-term institutional trust? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing, keep adapting, and I'll see you next time.